Hey everybody, what is going on? Serial Lover Jive here, and today we're talking conspiracy theories, okay? So this is episode 2 of my whole conspiracy theory thing. We're going to have some Apex Legends videos playing in the background, so please enjoy those at your leisure, but otherwise sit down, tune in, and get ready to have your mind blown, hopefully. So what we're talking about today is ancient civilizations. So we're not talking about the Mesopotamian Empire. We're not talking about the Byzantines. We're not talking about the Egyptians. We're going way back to what a lot of historians would call the pre-pottery era. So this would be 10th to 8th millennial BCE. So that's before Christ, right? Way back. We're talking so far back that the ancient Egyptians are closer to us than they were to them. Just think about how crazy that is, right? So like the Egyptian knowledge, everything the Egyptians knew, it probably didn't include anything from these people just because of how far back it goes. Just think about how hard it is for us to know anything about ancient Egyptians. And now think about civilization back before they had all this stuff that they could do research with. And then think about them trying to think about a civilization that's farther back than the Egyptians are from us. Crazy, right? So as far as most historians would say, this was an era that was called the pre-pottery Neolithic area, okay? So this was an area where like civilization was just coming into its own. We were still mostly hunter-gatherers. There might have been some concept of people like picking berries and stuff like that, but we didn't really have agriculture. We didn't have pottery. Human civilization was still tribal, right? And not even tribal to the point like, oh, we've got a tribe, we've got some huts and we're moving around. More tribal like we're always on the move, we're chasing animals, and that's just how we live. So looking at this, what my hypothesis here is, or what I'm claiming, is that we're wrong, that the pre-pottery era is not an era where humans didn't have any technology and were pre-pottery. What I'm claiming is that we were at some level of technology that you'd see sort of in the Mayan Empire days, okay? And this is huge because the claim, and this is a claim made by archaeologists and various people they're sort of known as fringe, but I thought I'd cover it because it seems cool. And this is actually an extremely realistic, in my opinion, premises, right? So the reason I think this is real, the reason I think all of this is possible is because of a place called the Gobekli Tepe, okay? So this is an area in Turkey, right? It's sort of by the Syrian border. It's a little bit more dangerous to go there nowadays. I actually do know people who have been there and seen this. So this area does in fact exist. This isn't some like conspiracy theory thing. This is actually an area that exists, that is shown online. And here's the crazy part. Everybody sort of agrees it was founded in the 10th millennium and that it was abandoned somewhere around the 8th millennium. This is around the pre-pottery age, okay? So this is before humans had pottery. Now, what's so crazy, what's just mind-blowing about this, right, is if you look up the pictures, and I recommend you guys all do this. I might edit some pictures in if I can, but I don't know if I'll have time. What's so crazy about this is that this place has the world's oldest megaliths, right? There's 200 pillars over here. There's like over 200 pillars. And again, think about this. We're talking about something that's 12,000 years ago now. Over 12,000, even if we say, hey, let's say that they got the dates wrong and the date it was abandoned was the date that it was like all built to. We're still talking 10,000 years. If you look at wear and tear on stuff, just how much it degrades. 10,000 years, it is a crazy amount of time. It's the amount of time that will just completely sort of just rain and weather patterns and everything like that is just going to wear everything down. So you're not going to be able to see much. But here's the hypothesis, right? That there were all these pillars. You can see pictures of the pillars if you look online. I'm looking at a picture right now. It looks sort of like an amphitheater type thing, the ruins, but there are these pillars, huge pillars that weigh, I believe they're weighing like tons, right? So we're talking about something that's like tons and tons and tons of weight. Literally, like some of these pillars are supposed to weigh up to 10 tons. So think about that. This isn't like one guy messing around. This isn't some Einstein back in the day who was just ahead of his time. This is a whole group, okay? And the craziness about this area is that if you look, you can actually see carvings. You can see sort of pillars. You can see all sorts of stuff just all over the place that sort of proves that humans needed to have settled down. And the reason for this is, well, it's manifold, right? First off, these pillars were carved, these pillars were designed, these pillars were stood up, sort of like what you'd see if you guys are familiar with Stonehenge or anything like that. You're talking about pillars like that, right? Nothing too advanced. It's not like what you're going to see in the Capitol building of your country or anything like that, but they're still pillars. It's still something that needed to be done and stood up. This takes a huge group of people, a group larger, in theory, larger than any tribe should have or had a right to be back in these days. Again, these tribes are just running around hunting animals, and while you can sustain a population that is maybe even in the hundreds, I'm not 100% sure on this, but in the hundreds, you just can't get enough people to lift those stones, because again, in any of these tribes, you're going to have women, you're going to have children, and you're going to have men. So, like, you're not going to have a tribe of 100 guys looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger lifting this thing up, right? These guys are out, they're hunting, they're hunting and gathering, of course, right? They're out there hunting and gathering, so they are, like, pretty strong, but they're not training to lift huge amounts of weight. So you need a lot of people to do this, and you need technology to do this, right? You need to have some way to lift these pillars. You need to have some sort of communication style. You need a society that is sort of sitting down, right? You need a society that isn't just a hunter and gatherer society. You need a society that has some sort of crops, whether it's animals that are just in the area, like a huge tribe that's like a huge herd that's staying there, or that they're actually growing crops, okay? You need them to be sort of settled. And that's what Gobekli Tepe proves, that a lot of people are just up in arms about, right? Because this disproves almost everything that modern archaeology has told us to this day, as far as just the dates on stuff, right? It means that we're off. It means that there was, even at the time, when everybody says there was this whole pre-pottery era, there was a civilization that was ahead of the game, ahead of the curve. And why is that not possible? I think it is. I think what we're looking at is a civilization that was ahead of the curve, ahead of everybody else. And what they were doing is they were building temples. They were building these monuments in Gobekli Tepe over thousands of years. And they were settled down in this area. They were at least, for some reason, they were at least coming back to this area to build a pillar. Maybe they only built a pillar every 100 years, right? You'd still end up with, well, maybe not. Yeah, even if you built a pillar every 100 years, you could still end up with 20, 30 pillars. You're talking about 200 here, so let's say they built a pillar every year. Then you're going to have way more. Like, these guys are not going fast. That's one of the things that a lot of conspiracy theorists want everybody to think, that Gobekli Tepe was built, like, just overnight, right? Like, faster than any skyscraper in China is going up right now. And that's not the truth. Gobekli Tepe was probably built over thousands of years. And while it is possible for a hunter-gatherer tribe to keep coming back to the same location and building these pillars year after year, they've got to sit down, they've got to build, and they've got to have some concepts that just we didn't think were available at the time. The other thing you're going to see is carvings that are rather ornate for the time period. Again, you've got to think about time periods here. These aren't carvings that are going to compare to the masteries of the Romans or anything like that, or the Greeks. But these are carvings that they look a lot better than what you'd expect from a 10,000-year-old civilization. And the crazy thing here is it doesn't prove Atlantis. It doesn't prove any of these conspiracy theories about nuclear war back in the day or anything like that, but it does prove that archaeology is wrong, or was wrong. It proves that there's something we don't know about. There's some ancient civilization that we've completely forgotten about that had a level of technology beyond anything that we thought in the day. And the crazy thing is, what this does is this opens up a lot of other conspiracy theories, because there's a lot of other sort of ancient wonders that we attribute to various societies. For example, the Egyptians get a lot of credit for the pyramids, but a lot of people hypothesize that the pyramids were actually older than we thought. They're older than Egyptian civilization, that maybe the Egyptians just wandered into it and built around the pyramids, okay? The Nile River and Gobekli Tepe, again, you've got to remember, these are in like the Fertile Crescent, the area where civilization was first formed, where mankind was first formed, if you will. And because of this, anyone who's based there, they're going to have spent a lot less time traveling, and maybe they've spent a lot more time settling down and researching. It's the same as if you look at any country nowadays, right? If you look at a war-torn country like Yemen, they're not coming up with the latest research because they're at war, right? It makes sense. They're being bombed daily. It's a complete travesty of... We're not going to get into that, but it's horrible what's happening over there. But the fact is, they're not going to be able to do any research. They're not going to be able to come up with anything because they're busy doing that. So if you're a hunter-gatherer, if you're a society that's traveling, going, you're not going to be able to sit down and come up with the technology required to carve out these intricate carvings and create these pillars and sort of create a masterpiece of its time. And again, going back to it, this doesn't prove that Atlantis existed. It doesn't prove that the pyramids were built before the Egyptians, but it does prove something happened 12,000 years ago that we can't explain, that our society doesn't know about yet. And I think that's good. I think that sense of wonder is good. But the one thing I hate to see is there's a lot of people, a lot of archaeologists. I'm no archaeologist, so I'm not an expert on this, but there's a lot of people that are attacked and refuse to look at these sites because they want their books, they want their knowledge to be correct. And I can completely sympathize with that. You hate to see your knowledge go bad. I'm a programmer by trade. My knowledge goes bad so often, it's crazy. But you hate to see your knowledge go bad. And that's what a lot of these people are looking at. They're looking at something that disproves a lot of what they've been taught and what they're teaching. And that is, it causes some issues, I think, internally. And a lot of people are disproving that. But the site exists. The pictures exist. The technology is beyond what we thought any ancient civilization could have at the day of that day. So obviously something's off. Something is wrong. And I think it's a cool site because what it does is it's sort of a slap in the face. It's proof, just undeniable proof that ancient civilizations were more advanced than we thought. And it opens up a lot of discussion, I believe, into sort of the pyramids and everything like that. I'm not going to go into the pyramids because I'm trying to make these videos 10 to 20 minutes long, but I wanted to cover Gobekli Tepe first because it's one of those things like I deep dived into. I started looking at all the different sort of images of the area, and it really is amazing what they've done. It's like I'm going to try and describe it for you. It's a bunch of pillars. They're sort of arranged in a loose circle, and they have outer ranges, right? So you've got inner pillars and outer pillars. I believe that the inner pillars, I think they believe are the oldest, and the outer pillars are the newest. So it's something that was constructed over time. It looks like it's in a hole in the ground, but that's not true. That's just soil filling it up. And it's just this crazy thing because it hasn't all been excavated. Excavation actually stopped at one point just due to the area and the Turkish government and everything like that. I don't know if there's any excavation going on of Gobekli Tepe anymore, but I do know people who have been there, and they say it exists. It's a cool thing to see because it just disproves so much. And one of the things especially is if you Google it, you're going to see a picture of a pillar there, or of a carving there, and you can just see how advanced it is. It looks like something that I would have expected to come out of Egyptian society, or a society that is a little bit more advanced as far as artistry goes. And that's what I want you guys to look at. That's what I want you guys to remember. It's not about whether these guys were at our level. It's about just proving that there's something out there that we don't know about, and that would be the civilization that created Gobekli Tepe. And by the way, some people say it's over 12,000 years old. So the dates aren't concrete. I just was giving you guys the most the most agreed upon dates. And again, like the carvings, there's carvings all over, and a lot of this stuff does get worn down. So there were probably more carvings back in the day, back when this was created. This was a civilization, for all intents and purposes, that must have been settled down, that must have at least been spending months in this area every year doing this. And that's not something that we can explain. That's not something that we thought existed until we found Gobekli Tepe. So it's just one of those things, like, I don't know if I'm conveying this or not, but it's mind-blowing because it's proof. It's proof that ancient civilizations were more advanced, that ancient civilizations existed, and it opens the floodgates because now all of a sudden a lot of these older wonders, some of the stuff that you're finding now in Laos, some of the stuff you're finding in South America, some of the stuff you're finding in Egypt, it might be older. It might be more unexplained, and it might be more advanced than we ever thought before. But the question is, what happened to these societies? Why did they disappear? How could something get so advanced and then disappear? That's a question for another episode, and there's plenty of videos out there on it. But for now, that's sort of my case. That's my exclamation, and I think shouldn't even be a conspiracy theory at this point. This should be something that's talked about in the mainstream, but it's not, because there's no conspiracy. There's no conspiracy. It's just a bunch of people who don't want their knowledge to grow old, and they're holding us back because of it. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I really encourage you guys to look up Gobekli Tepe, look at some of these pictures, and just really learn what it is, because it is just such a crazy site, such an amazing site, such a cool piece of human history that I think everybody should have a look at least. Anyways, like I said, thank you for watching, and until next time.